All right, ready to dive in today. We're tackling SimCLR teaching computers to see like we do.
And the real kicker, without needing us to label everything for them.
Right. Imagine showing a kid a million pictures of a cat and expecting them to just figure it out. That's what we're talking about, and it's working surprisingly well.
It's called contrastive learning, and it all comes down to what the researchers call a simple framework. They actually use that phrase in the paper.
Okay, simple framework, music to my ears. So how does this whole thing actually work? Break it down for me.
Imagine showing that same kid two pictures of a cat, but slightly different. One's a close-up, the other shows the whole cat, maybe lounging around. You could say, see, these are similar, BUT. That's SimCLR contrastive learning, highlighting subtle differences.
So it's like saying, pay attention, there's something specific connecting these images even though they look a little different, forces the AI to think critically.
Exactly. They call these tweaked images positive pair and feed them through a neural network. Think of it like the AI's brain processing information.
And we're talking a superpowered brain here, right? Something like ResNet, which I know is used a lot in image recognition.
You got it. But here's the really interesting part. It's not just about feeding in the images. It's what SimCLR does after that's key.
Okay, so more to it than just showing the AI a bunch of cat pictures. What's the magic ingredient?
They use something called a projection head. Sounds complicated, but essentially it forces the network to distill only the most important visual information.
So it's like saying, out of all the things you could be looking at, focus on this. This simple framework is getting pretty clever.
Right. And to keep the AI on track, they use a specific loss function. It's like a built-in scoring system for the network as it's learning.
So the loss function tells the AI whether it's getting warmer or colder as it figures out what makes a cat, all without us actually telling it. That's wild. But let's go back to these positive pairs for a second. You mentioned tweaking the images. What kind of tweaks are we talking about here? Like giving all the cats funny hats?
Right. Not exactly funny hats, but you're on the right track. It's called data augmentation, and it's crucial to the entire process.
Let's explore that a bit further.
So imagine taking that cat picture and making a bunch of copies, but each one's a little different.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
One might be zoomed in, another flipped around, another with the colors tweaked.
So it's about showing the AI the same thing from a bunch of different angles.
Exactly. And the researchers played around with TONS of these augmentations, cropping, rotating, even blurring the image. But one of the most important, color distortion.
Color distortion. Wait, wouldn't messing with the colors make it harder for the AI to figure things out?
That's a thing. Seems counterintuitive, but relying too much on color can actually be a shortcut for the AI. Like, it might decide a cat's different from a dog just because of their fur color.
Instead of actually understanding the shapes and stuff that make them different, kind of a superficial way to look at it.
Right. But throw in some color distortion, suddenly it can't rely on those easy cues anymore.
It's like forcing it to look past the surface and really understand those fundamental shapes and textures to actually get what it's seeing.
You've got it. And get this whole data augmentation thing needs to be even stronger when you're not using labeled data.
Really? So the less information you give the AI up front, the more you have to challenge it during training, like some kind of AI boot camp.
Exactly. Push it harder so it learns even better. But okay, we've got these augmented images. They've been through the neural network. That projection head has done its thing. What happens next?
Yeah, bring it all home for me. How does this actually translate into the AI learning?
So now we're getting into the architecture of the neural network itself. Remember ResNet, our AI brain?
Of course.
Turns out the size and structure of that brain really impacts how well it learns.
So we're talking AI brain surgery now. This is where it gets really complicated.
Well, they found that bigger is often better. Increasing the depth and width of the neural network actually helped it perform better.
Makes sense. Bigger brain, more room to work with.
And here's the really cool part. The performance gap between how SimCLR learns and how traditional methods learn, that gap actually shrank raw as they used larger models.
So the bigger you go, the less it matters whether the AI is being spoon-fed information or figuring it out on its own. That's amazing.
Right. And that projection head we talked about plays a big role in that too.
Oh yeah, the bottleneck thing, right. Tell me more about why that's so important.
Well, they experimented with a few different types of projection heads, and they found that a nonlinear one worked best.
Nonlinear. Refresh my memory on what that means again.
It's kind of like, imagine a straight line versus a winding path. A nonlinear head is like that winding path, able to learn more complex relationships in the data.
So a more sophisticated way of seeing and understanding. Like upgrading from a basic lens to a superpowered telescope.
Exactly. But it's not just about the architecture. It's about how SimCLR measures its own progress, too. Like it has its own internal guidance system.
You mean like a progress report for AI?
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
now I need to know more. How does it actually know if it's on the right track? You mean like a progress report for AI? Okay, now I need to know more. How does it actually know if it's on the right track?
It's all about the loss function. That's how the network measures how well it's doing, tells it if it's understanding those images correctly.
Okay, break it down for me. What kind of loss function are we talking about with SimCLR?
They landed on one called NTX.
NTX? Catchy. So what's so great about this one?
It uses this really cool concept called cosine similarity. Basically, a way to measure how alike two images are.
Cosine similarity. Wait a second, are we talking trigonometry now? Is SimCLR getting at its protractor?
You got it. But don't worry, no need to dig out your old math textbook. Think of it like SimCLR uses this to figure out how similar those cat pictures are based on, like, their catness features, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so instead of measuring with a ruler, it's like SimCLR has this special AI protractor to see how much those images line up in terms of, like you said, their essential catness.
Exactly. And it gets even more sophisticated. NTZent uses this cosine similarity with something called a temperature parameter to really fine-tune things.
Temperature parameter. Is the AI getting overheated with all this learning?
Not exactly. It's more like adjusting how sensitive a thermostat is. It helps SimCLR tell the difference between those similar images or positive pairs and all the other less similar images it sees.
So it's like fine-tuning the AI's focus, right?
Right.
Making sure it's honing in on the right details.
Exactly. And when it comes to learning, there's another surprising factor that comes into play. Batch size.
Batch size. We talk about how much data SimCLR is analyzing at once.
You got it. And get this, bigger batches actually led to faster, more effective learning.
More data, smarter AI.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense when you think about it. Give it more to work with, it learns faster.
Right. So we've talked about how SimCLR learns, the augmentations, the neural network architecture, that fancy loss function, even batch size. But how does it all shake out in the real world?
Yeah, does SimCLR actually live up to the hype?
Well, they put it through the ringer, tons of tests, compared it to other cutting-edge methods, and honestly, the results are pretty amazing.
Okay, give me the highlights.
They tested it on ImageNet, it's like the gold standard for image recognition, and SimCLR. It either matched or even beat some of the best supervised learning methods out there.
Wait, it did just as well as methods that use labeled data, even though SimCLR doesn't need those labels?
You got it. That's what's so groundbreaking here.
That's incredible. What does this mean for, like, the average person? What are the real-world applications?
Imagine a world where AI can just teach itself to understand images. We're talking better medical diagnoses, AI that can analyze scans with insane accuracy, self-driving cars that can actually, like, think for themselves.
Okay, now that is a future I can get behind. So this simple framework has the potential to really shake things up.
Absolutely. And the best part is, this is just the beginning. Who knows what we'll be able to do with AI that can learn like this?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for taking me on this deep dive into the world of SimCLR. Until next time.